What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Rum Pure Sports review preview show. I guess that's what we'll call it, the review preview. We're going to go and look back at some decisions in week one, more so cash games, but we'll also talk some tournaments as well. And then we're going to give a little preview, some initial thoughts into week two as those salaries kind of just dropped yesterday. The first part will just be like the preview. We'll talk about some decisions that we had up to lock. Some regrets, and then, maybe some things that we learned from week one that we can apply to week two and the, weeks moving forward. Overall for me, week one, big disappointment, on FanDuel. I feel like I made the right move. We get that news that the backup for the 49ers is inactive. You got Mostert sitting there going against the Lions team as a 7 to 8 point favorite. Just went ahead and locked him in. And, that obviously didn't work out because he got injured in the first quarter. Game script, everything would have been perfect for him. He would have smashed. But, when you're talking NFL DFS, injuries do happen. And the variance, that does, increase the variance a little bit. So I was happy with that decision. Obviously, the results weren't all that good. And then over on DraftKings, the builds were hard to get away from, where you played those cheap wide receivers, you played Pitts, and then you spent up at running back. Now the running backs got there. The problem lies with Pitts and some of those cheap wide receivers where we had a lot of busts, and then going cheap at defense seemed like the route to go. And I still think it was. And, the popular one or the one that I thought was the best, the Falcons, maybe probably the most disappointing team, I'd say, overall in week one, when you look at offensive standpoint, how they played on defense, the matchup. They should have been able to move the ball against the Eagles. They just literally did nothing. They looked awful. So those are, a few of my initial takeaways from week one. As always, I'm joined by Mangone, joined by Title as well. Let's go to you first, Title. Just, your overall thoughts from week one.
Yeah, free money Sunday wasn't so free week one, unfortunately. Wasn't the best week over here. I played tournaments and football too, but mainly cash games on both sides. FanDuel, I was sitting around the 47th mark to 58th. You know how much they vary from the $5 to $25 50s. I like my team. I won't go into it too much right now. We can do it after we introduce Mangone, but there was definitely a couple locks. I will say, we talked about it last week with the ownership. I thought it was going to be more condensed with the pricing come out so early. Ownership was pretty spread out on both sites with some different builds. DraftKings had a pretty popular build. A lot of people I saw Mangone was on the team too. Kamara, Dalvin Cook, C-Mac. I actually didn't go that team. The longer the week went on, I actually played Kelsey on both sites in cash over Pitts. Obviously, I don't know. I think it was pretty close. It got me on a different route. And what got me Devontae Adams, which I absolutely love that game. Obviously, the Packers disappointed completely. So DraftKings died with Devontae up top. But I went Josh Allen, like I talked about on both sites too. I like the paying up at quarterback. He didn't get there, but we saw the Mahomes, the Kyler Murrays, how much paying up at quarterback. Their ceiling is just so much better than a lot of the lower guys with the rushing upside and stuff. So I like my process. I'm excited to talk it over, see Mangone's team and stuff too. But results weren't there. But NFL is a long year. We get an extra regular season this year too, and you don't win them all. It's more about the process, because if your process is there, the results will come. So excited to have football back though.
Yeah, that's an important part. We got football back. We can learn from some things in week one and apply it moving forward. It's the beauty of DFS. You're not locked in to the same team all season long. Mangone, bring you in here. Your overall thoughts, week one, any takeaways that you might have moving forward.
Yeah. So the worst part is I feel like I got a lot of things right that I talked about, and I still did made the mistakes by playing them. I talked about not wanting to play these rookies, right? What rookie was good? Were there any rookies that you were like,
Jamar
hey,
Chase.
Amazing? Who was
Jamar Chase.
Yeah, the one that no one was on because he can't catch, right?
I had him 4%. Hoop talked about him on the Hardwood show too. That Bengal stack was tasty.
But I with the Chase thing, that was the one thing that we did talk about on the Morning Wood show. I wasn't buying. Okay, it's 1 week and he caught a long bomb.
You were right.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not going to believe the guy just can't catch a football all of a sudden. I'm not buying into that. And yeah, he was unhomed. I mean, if you got on him in tournaments, you probably
4%.
did pretty well. Yeah, unhomed. But yeah, go ahead. Continue on, Mangone.
Yeah, I mean, just that's the whole thing that I heard all week, though. It's like, all these rookies are going to be great. It's like, well, all these rookies don't know the playbook. They're all in new situations. How about some more known situations? Sure, some known situations like Calvin Ridley, it ended up busting, right? It looked like out the gate he was just going to go for like 30. I mean, the first drive was unbelievable. But overall, DraftKings, I felt like it was kind of a prove it week. You just play that team that was like presented to me and call it a day and hope for the best. And, it didn't like win everything, but it got some money back, no complaints. And then FanDuel, I pivoted to Mostert. I thought that was the correct call on FanDuel specifically. Just to put it in perspective, I think it was cash games. Not that he wasn't on anyone's radar, I'd say, going into to Sunday. I think some people were playing him. I don't think he was going to be super high owned on FanDuel, but he got to 60%, right? It did feel like you were going to maybe get him at like 50 or lower, maybe even 40. So felt like there were some quick adjustments on him. Overall, that injury is going to hurt when 60% gets wiped. Like, hey, I know there were some other bad scores there, but you need to do a lot to be able to get the job done. I just didn't have enough to get it done. I even made the pivot from Kamara to Tyreek Hill. And I kept Callaway because I said, maybe I don't need to make that much of a pivot because I thought a lot of teams were dead. And I was fighting about it. I was like, do I even go off of Callaway to Deontay Harris? And if I do that, I get all the leverage in the world. But I was like, I don't know if I need to go that far. I feel like if I get 15 plus from Hill over Kamara, I should cash and win. And didn't end up working out that way. It's okay. It's hard to make those swaps and pivots and figure it out. So you got to be sure that you're behind and make sure that if you do make those decisions, and I think that's something I want to do going forward, is if I know I'm definitely behind, I'm going all the way and just like pushing all the chips. I'm not just doing one guy here, one guy there. I think that's one adjustment I'm going to make sure to make. And I've been kind of learning as I try and make those adjustments whenever I'm down.
And it's an important thing. We talked about it in the first show last week, where in cash games, I mean, it's not only tournaments where you need to be looking to make pivots, cash games as well. I mean, that was a perfect situation last week where you're fighting an upstream battle there where 40% of the field has a huge advantage over you because 40% in those contests didn't play the guy that got injured with 2 fantasy points. So you're really fighting for just those 10% of spots to be able to cash, and you got to do something unique. I mean, good move on your part. Obviously, it didn't end up fully getting there, but
the key hoop, I just want to mention why I didn't make the Callaway swaps. I thought Callaway could leverage Kamara still, right? If Kamara had a really bad game, like the wide receiver one has to get it done. And then I also thought Tyreek Hill could just leverage Kelsey too, but it just turned out they both ate, which happens sometimes.
Yeah.
So that I want to talk about that process too, of thinking of it, because again, when you're wanting a guy to fail and you're like, the only way I'm going to win is if this guy fails, just looking for that pivot that can get you over the top, like a Deontay Harris over a Callaway, is the thing that I think you need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, before we go into the specifics, let's just shout out some of our winners in the Members Never Win segment from last week. We had Chase Addy NC, he took down 25,000. We had Shawnee Cash DFS, he took down 15,000. Then we also want to shout out the TOC winner. If you're unfamiliar with what the TOC is, it's our own personal tournament of championship where we're kicking in $1,000 each week in prizes. DraftKings is giving away a $333 Wildcat ticket along with, I believe, 20 Millie Maker tickets or 10 or 20 Millie Maker tickets. So a lot of free prizes. The only stipulation is to win the cash prizes, you have to be a member over at Run Pure Sports. I have the winning lineup up here from the TOC winner. Let me see, where did that go? All right. So yeah, it was a weird week with tournaments where, correlation really didn't win. I mean, if you had a stack, any run backs really didn't work. That's how you should be looking to build tournament teams. But in this team, we see that the winner went with Baker Mayfield and Peoples Jones as a little mini stack. Also had Chubb as well. So Mayfield, Chubb, Peoples Jones brought it back with Tyreek Hill. I mean, okay, the reason he won obviously is Deebo Samuels, 35.9 at 1.7%, played the Broncos defense, Fant, and then Marvin Jones. So the main thing here was, it was a weird week where correlation wasn't all that big of a factor. You needed these big ceiling scores. He was lucky enough to pair Tyreek Hill with Deebo Samuels, and that was, 75 fantasy points out of his 175. So Nick Chubb got 23. That was a good score. Yeah, it's just an interesting lineup. One that I certainly would have never landed on, but that's kind of what it took in week one. You needed to do something a little bit off the radar. Now, more weeks than not, you're going to see a lot more correlation within these lineups and, things that, quarterback, two wide receivers and a run back, quarterback, one wide receiver and a run back. This is a unique situation where he did kind of have that, but those guys didn't all do all that good. So just a kind of crazy, wild week. I mean, any thoughts, Mangone, on this team that took down the TOC?
Yeah, I mean, congrats to the winner. And if you're not in it, right, be sure to get into that contest. It's a members contest where you get a chance to win a ton of awesome cash prizes. I think for the entire year, it's $35,000 altogether. DraftKings also put some money in. We put some money in. So it's a good time. And I mean, Tyreek Hill, the guy who can break the slate, right? You see him in there at 6.3. You see the run back of the Peoples Jones, which I'm curious to. I wish I knew the answer to this if he swapped to him, right? Based on
had to have.
What?
Yeah.
He had to have. And Chase Alec was talking about in the chat too.
I will say that there's a lot of like hype around him. I don't know. You did Best Ball's title, right? Wasn't there like a lot of hype around him for the season? So I wouldn't be surprised, but you're probably right. He probably did swap over to him. He probably had one of those other 3K really cheap receivers and figured the run back was the better option, which would make some sense there for sure. Noah Fant there at tight end. Obviously, he's a beast, right? He's a cheap guy that I think targeting this year is going to be a smart idea. And then definitely leverage the Mostert news a little bit with Deebo Samuel. The one thing I kind of thought about when thinking about the Niners was, listen, Deebo Samuel can also run the ball, right? Like he is involved in the running game and it's not a ton, but when you kind of get rid of someone like Trey Sermon, it's all these unknowns. It wouldn't have shocked me to see him run a little bit. So that's something I had in like the back of my mind, but I play mainly cash. I wasn't really firing in on Deebo Samuel. And when you lose a guy at running back that you do in Mostert, Deebo probably gets a little bit more work and gets more involved in the pass game, gets involved in more motion plays, and then crushes. So overall, it was a really awesome team. Had the right correlations and got the job done.
Yeah, and then the obvious big boost for Deebo as well is the situation with Brandon Ayuk, where basically like he's no longer their number two. So I mean, Deebo is definitely the most trusted wide receiver out there by far. So that benefited him as well. Title, any quick thoughts here on this team?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. Baker Mayfield, Chubb, and Peoples Jones. That's a game script you're playing if Cleveland's ahead of most of the game and KC's trailing, needed to sling it, and that's exactly how it did happen. Peoples Jones didn't get there, but when you play low-owned players like Deebo Samuel at 1%, a 35 piece can make up for a one spot, especially in like a tournament of champions. Someone did ask in chat what tournament this was. This is the tournament of champions we run every week at Run Pure Sports. You can find it in the Discord. You can find it on top of the playbook. You have to be a member. So that's the contest this was. And then, like the Ayuk news, he only played 23 to 59 snaps. Obviously, we talk about week one and how much variance and how many unknowns we have. This is a perfect example of it. I heard some rumors about it might have been a curfew issue. Same thing with Sermon. I don't know if that's true or not. I still have to look into that more. But if Ayuk's definitely falling on the depth chart, which I don't know why that'd be the case, Deebo and Kittle would absolutely be targets this year because they did have so many mouths to feed, and that would be one less. So I like the team. 3% Chubb, 1% Baker. I mean, a very low owned stack. And then you eat. I mean, this shows in tournaments. You can eat chalk, Kamara and Marvin Jones, who I had in cash too. Thought there were two of the better plays on the slate. You can eat some chalk when you're different everywhere else. And he mixed in chalk and low owned plays really well. Noah Fant, we talked about on this show last time. I said him, Logan Thomas, a good pivot from Pitts. I mean, Noah Fant's a very good football player, and he did his job. Judy got hurt too, so we'll be streaming him more. So the lineup's good. You had some correlation, tight end defense too. Usually it's more running back defense, but still. And the Broncos against Daniel Jones, I thought they were the best defense. Congrats to you. That's a good lineup. They secure a $333 ticket too and some money. So best of luck to them.
Yep. Congrats to the Real Squash, and that tournament will run again this week. And like I said, the only stipulation to win the cash prizes is you need to be a member at Run Pure Sports. All right, let's go to DraftKings first and kind of just review the lineups over there and the thought process and the cash games. I leaned with Mangone in this one, where I thought there was a pretty clear team that you just played in cash games. It was that Hurts team with all three of the running backs. So you had Hurts, you had McCaffrey, Cook, and Kamara. Pitts at tight end, and then you just played those cheap wide receivers, Callaway, Jones, Moore, Falcons D. Now, the problem with this team is it got cold in a hurry. You had some snowflakes here that began to pile up. Elijah Moore played the snaps, just, rookie quarterback, one catch for -3 yards, finishes with 0.7. The Falcons, just a dead team. I mean, it looked like right out of the gate, like you said, slinging the ball. Calvin Ridley looked really good. Looked like he was going to have a monster game. I was a little underweight on Calvin Ridley. That first drive scared the shit out of me. I was like, oh shit, he's going to get I thought it was going to be like a Darren Waller situation from last night where he just got peppered all game long. They literally just could do nothing. And I don't think the Eagles defense is all that impressive. You beat the Eagles by passing the ball. The Falcons looked like one of the worst teams in week one. So you lose the Kyle Pitts situation, 7 fantasy points. Then the Falcons defense was very popular at 2K. It's been proven spending down at defense on DraftKings is the move. Cash games, tournaments, all around. You had a lot of snowflakes in this. Callaway ends up in the 4 p.m. game. Boston, we kind of talked about it a little bit. It was just a hard situation to get away from. I saw a lot of sharp tournament guys pivot right off Callaway to Deontay Harris. He did that. Probably did pretty damn well. The other guys on this team, though, got the job done. Hurts, 29 fantasy points. A lot of quarterbacks had big games, though. So that's, that really wasn't a deciding factor. McCaffrey was very high. The guys that did well in this lineup were the ones that were really highly owned. So the snowflakes, the bust really hurt even more when it's the popular guys that do well, opposed to some of those. But I thought this was the right move, Mangone. You did as well. Just your, quick thought process behind this one.
Yeah, I thought it was the correct move. It all kind of fit and worked out. So you just kind of move on to next week, basically. I mean, it's like you plugged in those running backs, you plugged in those receivers because they were so cheap. I fell on Jalen Hurts. It was just that's just what I did. I think it just was very simple. You can make pivots here and there. Like I understood if you were like, hey, let me change one of the running backs to like a Devontae Adams or a Calvin Ridley, right? Getting like one of those guys at the receiver spot. If you wanted to, I was fine with it, but just kind of felt like that was what you did this week and you moved on. And I wasn't in love with DraftKings. It was one of those weeks where I kind of was like, okay, like if I push money on more site than another, I wanted to play more on FanDuel because I just thought that, think about contest entry, right? I want to enter a lot of those single entry ones rather than like those ones where it's like double ups and you can enter like 80 lineups. I don't want to be in those because then the trains are even more massive in those contests. So that was something I definitely was thinking about when I was entering lineups and also when I was entering head-to-heads. I wanted to make sure that I was kind of in contests where I wouldn't run into as many big trains because I knew that mine was going to be a huge one.
Yeah. There's definitely more decisions on FanDuel opposed to DraftKings. Title, you said you went a little bit of a different route. Talk to me about the decision process behind that.
Yeah, so I knew that team was going to be really chalky, and I personally didn't think it was as clear as they did. The same guys I had Kamara. I'm looking at my phone, so that's why I'm looking down. I had Kamara, I had Marvin Jones, Elijah Moore, Callaway, Falcons D. So the 3 cheap receivers I thought were very clear. Kamara I thought was very clear. Falcons D I thought was really clear. I went up at quarterback to Josh Allen. I absolutely love Josh Allen. I'm going to play a ton of them this year. I just love his ceiling. I thought Hurts was perfectly fine, but I had the money. And then Kelsey was a big point in my lineup. I got the Pitts love and all that for sure, but I thought running back had enough cheap options, the Mixons, the Gibsons, the Mike Davis of the world, that I thought I could go up to Kelsey. He's by far the best player at every position. Like the gap from 1 to 2 at tight end is by far the biggest. Obviously now Waller might be creeping up there to 1B, but still Kelsey and Pitts, like I just think Matt Ryan's completely dust at the end of the day. I've thought that for a little while and he just can't throw the ball. And I knew Pitts was going to be chalky. I was on him beginning of the week, but the more I looked at it, I didn't think he was a stone lock. I like Kelsey's floor and his ceiling. So I decided to go there. I got a little, this is like leverage pivoting kind of, but I went Mike Davis. I landed at him at 5,400 in cash. I didn't have Ridley. I didn't have Pitts. So, and I knew they would be pretty high owned. If they don't get there, I know this is more tournaments, but how it felt in my lineup, that means Mike Davis would have got there. And obviously they didn't even score a touchdown. So nobody really got there, but Mike Davis's game script. He's game script dependent. When the fact, if they're trailing, he can catch passes as they've shown. He has the rushing upside, the goal line stuff. He was 5,400. And then it got me Devontae Adams. I thought I played 4 receivers. I know we mentioned it a little bit last week. I played 4 receivers in cash on DK. I'll probably do it a lot this year with how the league is just throwing and airing it out so much. I mean, obviously Devontae Adams, that was the worst game script possible, and it didn't get there that way. But I thought he was fine. I love McCaffrey. I love Delvin Cook, but I took a discount in price to get Allen, to get Kelsey, and Devontae was getting 10 plus targets every game with the big red zone share. So I went that route a little bit. Mine was Josh Allen, Davis, Adams, Kelsey, to Mangone's Hurts, McCaffrey, Delvin Cook, and Pitts. Yeah, I mean, their side worked out for sure. Mine hardly had any dupes. That one had a long train, which I sometimes, if it's a coin flip, I'll go with the one that has none, because if I jump that one lineup, I'm already there. So I'm fine with where I went. It didn't work out. I thankfully head-to-heads. I get a lot of head-to-head exposure. I got some back there, but I was fine with my team. I think Mangone's team was really good too, and that was more popular.
Yeah, and that's something to definitely consider. If you're more so playing these 50-50s and double ups opposed to head-to-heads, you kind of need to have that mindset that Title has a little bit, because these teams are just becoming so overwhelmingly popular year after year now. 5 years ago, if you were playing NFL DFS and the same opportunity presented itself, this team where all these guys are 50, 60, 70% owned, 5 years ago, we're talking these guys are like 30, 40, 50% owned. And that might not seem like a big deal, but it's a huge deal. And these teams are just getting so duped. The pricing is so soft. I pulled up the pricing again for next week, and DraftKings did a little bit of a better job. FanDuel, there's just some criminally priced guys that we'll talk about when we get to the preview. But if you're more so in the 50-50 and double up streets, you might need to, employ the mindset that Title's talking about. If you know a team's going to be so popular, you might need to look elsewhere in a couple spots and not necessarily go full GPP, but, other logical pivots, like going to Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams, he's not a guy that you can only play in GPPs. He's the safest wide receiver in football now. Didn't get there last week. The Packers looked like shit. Speaking of that, you're a big Packers fan. Both you guys are Packers fan. Any concerns with the squad moving forward?
I mean, Aaron Rodgers is completely checked out, and I think
he looked disinterested.
Yeah, he didn't. It didn't look like he cared at all. I mean, I've never seen him in the fourth quarter. They showed him laughing on the sideline a little bit, getting their ass kicked. He just had no fire and motivation. And preseason or all the offseason stuff, that's a little concerning. But this might be the best. I mean, the talent on this Packers team, if you have Aaron Rodgers, you have the ceiling. This might have been the best thing that could have happened to Aaron Rodgers and finally woke him up. I don't think he wants to just go out and have one of the worst years possible. But to say I'm not concerned is definitely false. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, if he looks like that and he's just not engaged and doesn't care, this Packers team's going to be in for a long year, and Devontae Adams is not going to be even close to what we saw last year if that's how they're playing, which is
they get a good opportunity good opportunity to bounce back this week against the Lions, and that's, I believe, the Monday night game. Mangone, any Packers concerns?
Yeah, I know Title just said, you shouldn't have any concerns or you should have concerns. I have zero concerns. I'm perfectly fine with Rodgers. I literally was laughing when I didn't get to watch the game too. I was driving. So that was the unfortunate.
That's why.
What?
That's why you have no concerns. You didn't watch it.
Well, so this is the other thing. Dude, like how many times has Brady looked like shit in September? And like, okay, he ends up fine, right? Like Hoop, you've watched this forever. Brady's
but this fine. They had the offseason stuff, the trade stuff, the Jeopardy stuff where he's going to be the Jeopardy host. I mean, I don't know. There's potentially reasons for concern, but I mean, I mean, if I'm going to put money on it, I'm going to say, the Packers are going to bounce back and be a good team this year. Maybe the Saints are better than we thought. I mean,
defense looked awful too. And they've been saying it all preseason. Now their defense hasn't been able to stop the first team and all that. I mean, it just they got.
But that's nothing new. The Packers defense sucking. I mean, I'm used to that,
and that's scary. I mean, they'll be fine.
Again, life's about expectations. Title. I expect that. So no, it's not scary. I mean, they suck. They've always sucked. But Hoop, I do want to ask you one question because it was based on the conversation you were just talking about before and the dupes, and you're making fun of me on the Cash Show for suggesting Mr. TJ Hawkinson. So. Looking back,
of course, you're going to sneak in a little subtle victory lap on me out of nowhere.
Look, I'm asking. Do you think maybe I was a little more right than wrong? Because you were getting on me, no?
Hey, hang on. We can roll the tape back because my main point, I was not saying anything about your recommended plays. My point was I will put, and you know where I'm going with this, I will put any amount of money on the fact that your ass has Kyle Pitts in your cash lineup come Sunday. That would have cashed. I would be taking that ticket to the window.
It's definitely fair. I will say on FanDuel, I wish I would have looked at doing a little more. That scramble was tough though, and I'm trying to think back on FanDuel specifically, but if that 300 could have mattered, maybe. But Hoop, I did fire that TJ Hawkinson in all the tournament lineups, so I made it up there. So the pivot was great. We talked about that, so no complaints on that. I did make some money in some tournaments, so we got
that's a good segue because we're gonna hop into FanDuel. And before we do that, we got our boy Big T in the chat, and he noticed something a little different about our boy Title. And Title, why don't you take off that cap and let's see? You got one of your semi-annual haircuts, right?
Yeah, I get like twice a year. I'm about to work out after this, so not even showered. It's messy, but I'll be on the baseball show showered. Maybe it'll look a little better. But yeah,
look at those sexy locks. So yeah, Title got his semi-annual haircut, looking sexy. Big T noticed it. Just wanted to point that out. We're gonna hop over and talk FanDuel. Before we do that, do us that favor. Please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Helps us to continue to bring you guys these shows on a weekly basis. We have a lot of free content. We have a lot of premium content. This show is obviously free, so do us that favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe. And like we kind of all alluded to, the decision on FanDuel in terms of cash games was a little bit, there's more decision points, I guess, than opposed to DraftKings. Now, the one spot, I don't think there were many decisions. I think Josh Allen was the clear quarterback that you played in cash games. 8.1K. I'm doing the same thing Title did. I have it up here on my phone. Josh Allen at 8.1. You just played him. I felt. We get the news at running back that what's the dude's name? The 49ers backup.
Trey Sermon.
Yeah, Sermon. There was some thought that him and Mostert would split the work. Well, Sermon inactive. At that point, the right move was to play Mostert, and it would have worked out. He got hurt. He had 2 rushes for like 20 total yards in the first quarter. He would have rolled over that Lions defense all day long, gets hurt in the first quarter. Very unfortunate. He was only 6.1K. If you played an opponent in head-to-heads and he didn't have them, you made the right decision. They made the wrong decision. You make that play every single day of the week. It's a no-brainer play. It doesn't work out. He gets hurt. You're playing from behind the rest of the day. I played a lot of tournaments. I had him in all my lineups last week. That's why I got my dick kicked in. Another guy I felt that you played at running back was James Robinson, and I believe he was a staple play in the cash chart as well. I believe he might have. Did you switch that over to Mostert as a core play?
I kept James Robinson. I still thought with his price tag, he was the highest owned too. He was 76%.
Yeah. 5.9K going against what we thought was a dead Houston team. Unfortunately, the Jaguars might end up being one of the worst teams. I mean, the fact that they go and just just dominated by the Texans. They're favored on the road. There's not going to be a better spot all season long, probably, for the Jaguars. They get beat by the Texans. James Robinson. I don't know the exact numbers. I think he was out there a lot, but didn't get a lot of carries.
Yeah, Urban Meyer ran Carlos Hyde. It was like 38.5%. I think it was snaps. Urban Meyer absolutely doesn't. He likes Carlos Hyde too much, and that was what we're talking about, the week 1 unknowns and stuff. And on FanDuel, not sorry to interrupt, but it kind of goes. I played Trevor Lawrence and Visca in FanDuel tournaments and didn't play James Robinson as the pivot. Lawrence was really cheap. He was 2%. Everyone played James Robinson. And Urban, we don't know what coaches want to do in week 1. And we found out real quick the hard way. Thankfully, he was really chalky, but he didn't get a lot of opportunity. He had 5 carries for 25 yards. Wasn't out there a lot. I mean, you don't know that's happening.
The other cheap guy to consider would have been Najee Harris, another guy that was the right play. I mean, if you were on Najee Harris, it was the right play. What happened in that game is the reason why you play him. He's on the field. I think almost every offensive snap. He got all the running back carries. He got all the looks in the passing game out of the backfield. The results were shitty. Bills are a pretty good defense. That's probably why Najee Harris, I think, is definitely a guy to keep on the radar moving forward. I mean, he did the reason we considered him every reason we considered him did play out on the field. So very encouraging for him moving forward. He's really cheap on one of the sites. I have to look that up when we shift into the preview, but I believe it might be FanDuel again, where he's really cheap. Broncos defense, I think, was the defense that you played. 4.1K. They're going to be one of the better defenses in the league. They had a matchup against the Giants. It worked out. They got the job done. After that, I mean, I guess Callaway, maybe you could throw in that conversation as a guy to play, but the other wide receiver spots, tight end, I didn't think Pitts was a lock at tight end. I mean, it was easy just to play him at 6K. But those were some of I thought the lineup for the most part built itself. You're playing two of those cheap running backs. You're playing Josh Allen, Callaway, and then the Broncos D. So you're really looking at 3 or 4 spots. I'm going to go to you first, Title. Talk to me about the thought process on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of really good points, and I was on the same page. Josh Allen played him at quarterback, thought he was pretty. I tagged him as the cash chart play. He only came in 40% too, which I was actually surprised about, and I love to see. I mean, we pretty much
do see that at quarterback, though, regardless of how popular you think a quarterback's going to be. That's the one position where things do tend to get spread out a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean that's a part of the reason I love NFL DFS. I mean, we got a floor game pretty much from Josh Allen, and he gave you 17, which is the reason I love paying up for quarterback. He missed a 55-yard deep ball wide open. I can't remember if Gabe Davis maybe or something, but right there, that would have been another 25. So I thought Josh Allen and cash, I really like his upside, rushing upside, and they just sling it so many times. So him, Mostert, and Robinson, I played both of them. My third running back, I went Kamara. He was 8,600. No Latavius Murray in the conversation. Kamara is just one of the best running backs in the league. I wasn't scared of Green Bay's defense. And yeah, he was 40% owned. He got there 16.6. I thought that was a good play. Denver Broncos D, I went. And then tight end, yeah, I went Travis Kelce again, 8,500. We talk about on FanDuel how much touchdown equity means. And Travis Kelce is just, like we talk about it. We know what we're getting in week 1 from Travis Kelce. Whereas Kyle Pitts, I like Kyle Pitts a lot. I thought he made more sense on DraftKings with how the pricing was. But if I played Kelce on DraftKings, I was definitely playing Kelce on FanDuel. He got there. He did very well. Receiver, yeah, was definitely the hardest. I went Callaway. I thought he was the most obvious at 5,200. There were still guys like Elijah Moore. I saw some people play at 5K. There were some cheap guys, but Callaway was a wide receiver 1 with an upgrade at Jameis. It was just a whole different game script we didn't expect. First play of the game, caught a 19-yard pass, and I thought he was going to be rolling, but I like that play. Then the last 2 were pretty tough for me. I ended up going Diggs to pair with Josh Allen. He was 7,900. Devontae was like 8,600. So I got $700 savings. I got correlation with Josh Allen as the wide receiver 1 in Diggs. I like that play. And then I was left at a price range at 5,600. There's a lot of guys in that range I consider, but I ended up going LaVisca Chenault to finish it off at 5,600. I like Jacksonville. I liked you got the rushing and the receiving upside. I got James Robinson, Chenault. I thought Houston's absolutely brutal. I like Jacksonville a lot this week. They ended up playing from behind, so I got a good game script there. But in a dome against one of the worst teams in Houston, I thought two Jacksonville players who were cheap made some sense. So I finished my lineup out there. Allen, Mostert, Robinson, Diggs, Callaway, Chenault, Kelce, Kamara, Broncos. The scored 96 points, was anywhere from 48th, 47th to like 60th. So wasn't the best week for me, but I'm curious. I didn't even know Mangone's team. I liked my team I landed on. I had some correlation. Thought it made sense. The Mostert injury definitely sucked. So I liked what I did, though.
Yep. Mangone, talk to me about some of your final decisions in rounding out the FanDuel cash lineup.
Yeah, similar to you guys, right? Josh Allen, Raheem Mostert, James Robinson, Stephon Diggs, Calvin Ridley, Marquez Callaway, Kyle Pitts, Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill was because I got off Kamara, and then Denver Broncos D. Now I was like, Coop, you said you thought Denver was for sure the team. I was like Denver or Bills. I was okay with either. Didn't matter to me. But it just depends if you had the 500. But Broncos were clearly the better one. Just depending on what you did with the $500. I thought Kamara at that price ended up being worth kind of jamming in because of the situation. So I wanted to jam him in. I thought Mostert was definitely a guy you jammed in. And then I was just playing James Robinson because of the price. I had some worries that Urban Meyer would be a donkey, but I was like, yeah, I'll just like eat the chalk with everyone else. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, but even at there was some concern, but it's not like you're paying the premium for James Robinson. Even if the workload's not what you thought it was going to be, you're only paying 5.9K, so you still have a chance to get there. It's not like you're paying the full 9K. So I think even with some doubt, you can justify the play.
Yes, and the alternatives were, Najee Harris, who I thought was okay, but the more I looked at it, I thought he had not that he had more risk, but I didn't love his numbers as much as I thought. And I think going forward, I will be on him, but at least relative to Mostert, I felt like Harris just became the odd man out. And Mike Davis was another one who ended up being kind of odd man out too. That was in that range. So the real big decision point this week was, do you play Travis Kelce or do you pay up for another receiver? And it was like Kelce, Ridley, Diggs. And what I ended up coming to the conclusion was I had Ridley in there. And I just said to myself, based on the construction, I said, am I playing Travis Kelce or am I playing Stephon Diggs? And I said, I have Josh Allen. Why not just correlate it, right? I mean, it's just thought that made the most sense. And that's why I went that route. It wasn't that I had anything against Travis Kelce. I thought he was a great play and something that you can go to. So overall, that was kind of what I did. And then I made that pivot, like I said, Kamara to Tyreek Hill. It didn't get me over the top. It got me some money back in some spots, right? And of course, sometimes it just gets you all the way home where you just like make, you went from losing money to making all of the double ups back, but I did get some back, so I can't complain. Overall, it was a little bit of a loss on the week, but hey, it's a long season. We got a lot of DFS left to play.
Yeah, long season, we take, and week one's always, there's high variance and, you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know the new coaching strategies, things like that. So, part of this show is analyzing what we did the previous week, making adjustments and, making those adjustments in our lineups moving forward. So let's actually stick with FanDuel. We'll kind of just do a quick little preview or anything that does kind of stand out on the site. And honestly, the first thing I noticed, and this is just first look preview, no digging type thing, pricing is really, really soft on FanDuel. Like they got to bring these quarterbacks up like in price. Josh Allen still remains right around 8K at 8.1K. In a spot where you have to imagine they're bouncing back in a big way now. They're playing Miami. The total's, what is the total? It's probably not like a massive total or anything. It's
48.
Yeah, 48. So a good number. 8.1K is just a silly price tag for a guy like Josh Allen. Another guy I think that will be pretty popular, Justin Herbert, and he gets that matchup with the Cowboys, 7.6K. Dak is 8K. Like no one's over 9K. Kyler Murray coming off the massive game last week, big total against the Vikings, 8.7K. Maybe the fact that all these guys are underpriced gets things spread out, but that's just really, really cheap at the quarterback position. You go to running back, some really cheap plays. I think, we talked about Najee Harris's massive workload. Didn't do well last week, so that's probably why the price came down to 6.1K. Darrell Henderson getting, basically all the carries there for the Rams. He's 6.4K. Really the only guy in the slate over at 10K or over is Christian McCaffrey at 10K flat. I mean, we got to get more guys up in this price range. I'll go to wide receiver. A lot of guys obviously in play, but, Diggs is now 7.5K. His price came down. DK Metcalf, 7K. He's going to be a popular play. CD Lamb under 7K. AJ Brown came down to 7.1K. Really cheap price tags across the board. Go to tight end. We saw Waller get, what did he get, 18 targets last week, right? 7K on FanDuel. So your team is going to look loaded on FanDuel this week. There's no way around it. Anyone that goes in there and makes a team, they're going to look at it and say, hey, how the hell is this team going to lose? With the pricing, though, it is very possible because everyone's going to build these teams and say, how the hell is this team going to lose? Title, any initial thoughts here on FanDuel?
Yeah, you're going to be able to make a superstar team for sure. Another guy, Cooper Kupp, he's 6.2K. It's like, what is Cooper Kupp doing down there? Why is Josh Allen's price the same? We know what Diggs and them have done. Why is Diggs' price coming down after 6 for 69 game? Like, you'll be able to fit superstars. Kamara is 8,800. You might be able to get a McCaffrey at 10K. I play more McCaffrey on DraftKings, obviously, because of the full point PPR and the bonuses, but still McCaffrey on any site's fine. Yeah, it's looking right now, obviously so early. We just looked, but I don't see how I wouldn't spend up at quarterback in cash games. Hey, Kyler Murray 8.7, Allen 8.1, Herbert slung the ball over 50
You're basically
times.
forced because you're spending up without spending up.
Yeah.
You're getting the top tier guys without paying the premium. So you're going to want to. You're definitely unless something crazy happens, you're going to most likely be up here in this 8K range at quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a lot of value. What doesn't or what stands out is we don't have Kansas City on the slate. And that's always because Travis Kelce's an anchor at tight end 1. So without him, Kittle and Pitts didn't have the best game, but I saw his underlying metrics, how much he was out on the field. His target share was over 20. Matt Ryan's completely dust, but Pitts is going to be involved a lot in that offense. So even though he didn't have the best game one, don't be scared with him in the future. He's going to get his probably Pitts, Kittle, something like that. Waller, I like paying up at tight end stuff. So yeah, FanDuel, you'll make all-star team.
It's all-star. It's definitely all-star week on FanDuel. I mean, especially with the Chiefs, like you're taking out the best offense. It's typically the highest price guys at each position. You got to bump all these guys up with, KC off the slate. Unfortunate. Mangone, initial thoughts here on FanDuel.
Yeah, man, I mean, just some really bad price tags. I just pulled it up and just did a quick scroll at receiver and just saw what I fell on. Like Mike Evans is 6'7", Deontay Johnson 6'6". Like these are really good players at cheap prices, right? Like Cooper Kupp, like you said, 6,200. Even Juju at 6K against the Raiders. There's just guys here that like are names. Now, we're not saying necessarily for cash on these guys, but it's just showing you how soft the pricing is. I do think Waller at 7K is going to be an amazing option. We know that they absolutely feed him and they think he's incredible. And it's just going to lead you to spend a bit quarterback. I was trying to dive into quarterback while you guys were talking and see what on earth down in like the cheap range could I get talked into, right? And like, could you talk me into, Big T's boy Carson Wentz at 6'7", the MVP of the league, as he says? No, you couldn't talk me into him. Could you talk me into Matt Ryan, 6'7", like who absolutely looks like dust? No, like these guys are getting cheap and they're cheap for a reason because they suck. Could you talk me into Justin Fields if he started against the Bengals hoop at 6'4"? Like, could that get you there? That's the only guy I could create in my head as like a maybe possible play if some news came out. But that's all I got.
Imagine just being on the absolute freaking life heater, not even just DFS in life, and just having an awful take from the past. You got a good opportunity just to be done with it. Like people probably forgot about it. You've won millions and millions of dollars. You could give up on the take and move on, but you're so deep into this take on just like a shitty quarterback that not only now are, you're talking about it, you're betting on it. Like you are just all in when he had the easiest out just to be done with it, but just refuses and just doubles down, triples down, quadruples down. Like, man, Big T, just give up on it, right? I mean, Mangone, this
Listen, I don't have any shows with Big T really for football, so I can't like get a chance to rip them. So I'll take my shots here where I can, but I can't wait till I'm rich enough where I can lay down $2,000 on it and be okay with burning it. I mean, that's when you know that you're on a heater and you're absolutely just Big T rich. So I think you pay up at quarterback though, like we talked about. It seems like it's simple and it's easy to do. And there are some cheap running backs, but it does feel like you want to grab some of those running back raw points at the top. Like you said, Hoop, it's a superstar week over on FanDuel.com. Load up on all the good players. If you make a team, you're going to be like, oh, this team's awesome. You're going to send it to your buddy. Oh, look how good this team is. He's going to send you the same thing back in like 2 minutes of making a lineup.
Yep. It's going to be very easy, quick to make teams. I mean, that's, what they want because that's how they fill up the tournaments and whatnot, but do a little bit better than what they did. And I think DraftKings, this week is the pricing's a little bit better than on FanDuel. I still think we're going to have the opportunity to probably pay up at quarterback. We have a wide receiver play that, I think is in play as a full punt. Michael Gallup's going to be out. Not only do Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb get bumps, Cedric Wilson will be out on the field the entire time. It's 3.1K on DK, 4.9 on FanDuel. It's always better. I think if you're going to play with these cheap guys, they're better suited on DK opposed to on FanDuel because the PPR can kind of bail you out at times. Did a better job with Darren Waller. He's up at 7.6. Kittle's at 6.4. I still think we have that opportunity to go cheap at tight end on DK where you probably don't need to do it on FanDuel. It's very easy to get up there and play those guys on FanDuel. Just more efficiently priced, I think, on DK. Nothing really stands out. I mean, we talk about anytime McCaffrey's under 10K, you just play him. Well, they're tempting that this week because he's 9.9K. So he's right $100 under that 10K marker. Just still has that incredible floor that we saw last week, 9 receptions. So I think he's someone to definitely consider. Najee Harris is 6.3K, Kamara 8.8. Just better pricing overall, I think, on DK opposed to FanDuel. Stick with you, Mangone. Anything stand out to you on DK here out of the gates?
So DK, what are they going to do early on here? They're going to give us some soft pricing as always, because, hey, like people are building out teams. They want it to be easy. So that way, when you make a team, you can just say to your buddy, hey, look at this team I made. And you throw it in the Millie Maker. It's going to win me $1 million. So of course, expect to have some soft pricing. And when we do have soft pricing, I mean, I talked about it last week. Just feel free to like jam the guys in, right? I mean, I think that's kind of the approach that you need to take when building out your lineups. We don't have McCaffrey above 10K yet. I still think he's a guy that you can get in there and like you can jam Dalvin Cook, you can jam Kamara and all those guys if you like to. And it's worth mentioning that because we have such a loaded slate this week, that 4:00 games, right? There's a lot of different options. You got Minnesota, Arizona, some loaded teams. You got Atlanta, Tampa Bay, loaded teams. I mean, the Titans in Seattle, it's a game that definitely could shoot out a bit and it could be under-owned and you can make some pivots to that. Like I kind of did with the Tyreek Hill to Kamara. And then Dallas and the Chargers, which is again, a game that you expect a lot to go on. So that is something that on both sites, FanDuel and DraftKings, you need to be looking to do. You're going to see a lot more separate pricing between the quarterbacks at the top, like Josh Allen, 7-2. He's going to be too cheap in my opinion. Someone that I'm probably going to end up looking to go to, but there are going to be quarterbacks down in this lower range that I'm not going to ignore, right? Because the gap there compared to FanDuel is a lot larger. I talk about running backs. I'll probably be trying to jam some guys in, and mainly because if you look, I know on a site like DraftKings PPR matters, so that can help guys like Christian McCaffrey, but it can help those receivers. And like Title said before, like 4 receivers could be more in play. If we get enough of like those mid-range receivers start to get too cheap, like we're not there yet, but like Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, they're 5'9", 5'8". They became like 5K in like a couple of weeks. Like, you know, that could be really interesting. We still also have a lot of these other cheap receivers. I know Callaway's price went up because of the ownership that he got, but you see a guy like Pittman, and I know it's not the right matchup, but because he didn't have a great game, his price didn't really go up that much. So he went from 4-1 to only 4-3. And you're going to have all these other cheap receiver options that we're going to want to look at here. I mean, Elijah Moore went from 3K to 3.5K. Sure, he did not have a great game, but he was targeted a ton. And, you know, as the people like to say, market share, the air yards, they were all there this week, Hoop. So Elijah Moore, definitely a guy I'm going to look at. And there's all these cheap receivers. I think we're going to have this build for like the next couple of weeks that we're going to want to be kind of keying in on and watching the prices adjust and then kind of adjusting our lineups from there.
Yeah, you kind of touched on something that I thought was interesting, especially this week, the late swap options at 4 p.m. And you look at these 4 p.m. Eastern games, you got Minnesota, Arizona, total right now is sitting at 51. You have Atlanta and Tampa Bay, total sitting at 52. Dallas, Chargers, that total sitting at 55.5. And then you have the Titans and Seahawks, that's sitting at 53.5. So the biggest totals on this slate are basically sitting at the 4 p.m. Eastern time slot. A lot of the ownership, I think, obviously comes from this time slot as well. So it will be interesting for this week. Don't get very comfortable if you're winning GPPs after 1 p.m. Eastern because
that's what I was just going to say. I was going to say, can I screenshot at like 4 o'clock my game stack, like BigT right out in front and just tell people, oh, I'm winning everything. He doesn't do that, but it's like going early, you know, loading up on the game.
It's going to be a tough scene for those people this week, I have a feeling. Title, any initial thoughts here on DraftKings?
Yeah, you guys hit it. I was going to say those totals too. You don't see that very often. The 4 highest totals all in the last games. And then, yeah, I mean, Rashad Penny's out in week 2. Chris Carson gets a big bump. We didn't talk about it on FanDuel, but he's 6-1 on DraftKings, cheap on FanDuel too. Another running back that's going to be in consideration. As you mentioned, with Gallup out, just the injuries, some overline, Judy's out, so Noah Fant gets a bump, stuff like that, injuries that carry over and how they affect. In tournaments, though, I love week 2 in tournaments. People overreact to big games like a Deebo Samuel, or they overreact to bad games like a Michael Pittman and stuff like that. And it's week 1. I mean, it's football. You get a 70-yard touchdown, Melvin Gordon, and that one play you get there. Whereas you watch the games, I mean, stuff isn't happening like that all year. Don't overreact. Don't underreact, though. Like the James Robinson, there's definitely a lot of reason to have concern in a situation like that. So tournaments, their ownership's definitely going to be wrong in a lot of spots with people overreacting. Cash games, a lot of good plays. CeeDee Lamb's way too cheap with that injury. Chris Carson, Najee Harris is too cheap. The thing I do like about DraftKings, though, is at quarterback and tight end, I mean, you have a big difference in pricing from the top guys at Kyler Murray at 8,200. Tom Brady's in a really good matchup against Atlanta at 6,900. So that's 1,300 right there. Then like a Teddy Bridgewater, 5,400. He has some rushing upside. He gets this bad Jacksonville team. That's a 1,500 price difference right there. So I like on DraftKings where you do get different price ranges at solid matchups, solid quarterbacks at each one, which makes building in tournaments a lot different route. Same thing can be said about tight end. Waller's all the way up there. Then you got Kittle at 6'4", and then you even got Noah Fant there at 4'2", Higbee at 4'1", who are guys I like a lot too. So different price ranges at quarterback and tight end, which I really like since you only play one of them. So it's exciting. DraftKings definitely. I'm more excited for the pricing and different builds than I am on FanDuel.
Made it all show without talking with mute on right at the end. Had to do it. But yeah, we'll kind of wrap up the preview. These are just initial thoughts. No analysis. Haven't really dug all that deep. Just first glance type thoughts. I think it was pretty informative breakdown from the crew here. The review went well, and the main thing is you go back, you look, you make any adjustments that you need to, like Title kind of just mentioned at the end. Certain things you value more than others. And, that situation with James Robinson, like I can't imagine playing James Robinson moving forward after what happened last week and the fact that their team's going to be so shitty. So I think, the way you can use this show is, kind of piggyback some of these takeaways we have and, learn how to apply them moving forward. We will have the rest of our NFL content coming out throughout the week. I know some combination of me, Mangone, Title, and Holden will be on the Cash Show on Thursday, and that will be a deeper dive into the slate and more specific in terms of the player pool. We'll have our playbook out. We'll have the cash chart out. We'll have our cores up on Saturday, stack chart, everything else that you need to build your winning lineups this week. We're going to bounce back week 2. I feel it. We're going to put in the work and make sure we get it done. That's going to wrap it up for this show. And like I said, we'll be back with the rest of our content throughout the week. So for Mangone, for Title, I'm Hoop. We'll see you the rest of the week with our content.